In this video, I will explain how to derive a market demand function from individual consumer demand functions. So let's check out an example. Let's say that we have two consumers here that both have a demand for some good. Consumer 1 has the following demand function. Q1, their quantity demanded, is equal to 50 minus 5p, where p is the market price for some good. And consumer 2 has the following demand function. Q2, their quantity demanded, is equal to 40 minus 8 times p, where p, again, is the market price for this particular good. So how can we find the market demand function if we're given these two individual consumer demand functions? Well, because these two consumer demand functions are not the same, what this means is that once the price of this good hits a certain price level, one of the consumers will stop having a demand for it before the other consumer. So to find the market demand, here's the first step we need to do. We need to find the lowest price in which one of the consumers will not buy the product. In other words, their quantity demanded is equal to 0. So what we're going to do is set each of these equations equal to 0, and then we'll solve for p. So we'll find the price where both consumers say, okay, I no longer have a demand for this product. The price is too high. So let's start with consumer 1. We'll say 0 is equal to 50 minus 5p. So we're solving for p. So if we add a 5p to both sides, we find 5p is equal to 50. And to solve for p, we can divide both sides by 5. So the 5's cancel out on this side. We're left with p is equal to 50 divided by 5 is 10. So at a price of $10, this is the price where consumer 1 says, okay, I no longer have a demand for this good. In other words, my quantity demanded, Q1, is equal to 0. And we can see if we plugged in a 10 right here, 5 times 10 is 50, we would have 50 minus 50, which indeed is 0. So when the price of this good hits $10, consumer 1 says, I no longer have a demand for that good. Now let's find out what is this price for consumer 2. So we'll say 0 is equal to 40 minus 8p. And again, we're solving for p. So if we add an 8p to both sides, we find 8p is equal to 40. If we divide both sides by 8, these 8's cancel out, and we're left with p is equal to 40 divided by 8 is 5. So now for consumer 2, at $5, they no longer have a demand for this particular good. In other words, their quantity demanded, this Q2, is equal to 0 when P is equal to 5. So what we're saying is that once the price level of this good hits $5, consumer 2 can no longer be considered in the market demand function because they no longer have a demand for this product when the price is $5 or higher. So for our market demand function, here's what we can say. When the price of the good is less than 5, both consumers are interested in buying a certain quantity of this good. So when the price is less than 5, both consumers are interested. So to find the market demand, let's say Q, the quantity demanded of the whole market, which in this case is just these two consumers, it's just going to be the sum of their two consumer demand functions. So that's equal to Q1 plus Q2. So it's the sum of their two demand functions. So we can write that out. Q1 is 50 minus 5p, plus Q2 is 40 minus 8p. So we can simplify. Let's combine like terms. We have 50 plus 40, that's 90. So we'll say 90. And then we have negative 5p and negative 8p, that's negative 13p. So this is the market quantity demand when the price is less than 5. So when the price is less than $5, the quantity demanded is equal to 90 minus 13p. But as soon as the price, let's say, as soon as the price is greater than or equal to 5, remember that's when consumer 2 drops out and they say, nope, I no longer have a demand for this good at that price level. At $5 or higher, I have 0 demand. So now the market demand Q is only equal to Q1. So consumer 1's demand function. They're the only consumer left in the market that has a demand for this good when the price is greater than or equal to 5. So at that point, Q, the market demand, is just equal to Q1. So Q1 is just 50 minus 5p. So what we have is a scenario where the market demand is different when the price is less than 5 and when it's greater than or equal to 5. So let's go ahead and summarize what we have. All right, so here's what we found. The market demand function had the following results. When the price is less than 5, the quantity demanded is 90 minus 13p. But when the price was greater than or equal to 5, the quantity demanded is equal to 50 minus 5p. Now let's go ahead and graph these results just to get a visual idea of what we just found here. So if we create a graph where price is on the y-axis and quantity is on the x-axis, let's start by graphing both of the consumer demand functions. So let's start with consumer 1. How can we graph this function? Well, we just need to figure out the point where this function crosses this axis and this axis. So let's start by saying if we plug in a 0 for p, so if we plug in a 0 right here at this point where p is equal to 0, we get q is equal to 50. So that means this demand function will cross the q, this x-axis, at 50. And similarly, where will it cross this axis right here? So this is the point where q is equal to 0. So if we plug in a 0 right here, we'll find that p is equal to 10. So let's say 10, let's say that's right about here. And then we can do the same thing for consumer 2's demand function. So if we plug in a 0 for p, we get q is equal to 40. So let's say that's right about here, 40. And then if we plug in a 0 for q, we find that p is equal to 5. So p is equal to 5, let's say right about here. So here's consumer 1's demand function. It's this line right here. And consumer 2's demand function is this line right here. So let's go ahead and label that. So here's Q1, consumer 1's demand function, and here's Q2. Now our market demand function, how can we graph that? Well, let's start with when the price is greater than or equal to 5. Our market demand function is equal to this. Q is equal to 50 minus 5p. And that line is this line right here. So remember, when the price is above 5, so on our graph, 5's right here, when the price is above 5, the market demand is exactly equal to Q1 because consumer 1 is the only one that has demand when the price is above 5. So our market demand line is going to perfectly follow this Q1 line right here all the way until we reach a price point of 5. So once we hit a price point of 5, that's when consumer 2 is now interested in purchasing this good. So what it means is that the market demand function, the slope of this function is going to change. It's not going to keep following Q1. And specifically, we know that when the price is less than 5, our market demand function now has this equation. Q is equal to 90 minus 13p. So if we plug in a 0 right here for p, we find that Q is equal to 90. So for our market demand function, when p is equal to 0, so when p is all the way down here, Q is equal to 90, which let's say that's all the way out here. So our market demand function line is going to go like this. It's going to have a kink in the graph where at this price point, so at $5, once it dips below $5, the slope changes. So let's label this as Q, we'll say market. This is the market demand function line. So you can see that our market demand function line has two separate slopes because in this first portion of the slope right here, we saw that Q was equal to 50 minus 5p. But then in this second portion of the slope, the second portion of the line, it has the equation Q is equal to 90 minus 13p. So that's how we can graph our individual demand functions along with our market demand function. So whenever you have a situation where you have two consumers with different demand functions, you'll always have a market demand line that looks like this, where there's a kink in the graph where there are two separate demand functions at a specific price point.